Alright, before I begin, bit of a mix-up with my previous recordings, and I lost some things. But I just want to point out that I made a couple changes between this last recording and the current recording, which is that I added some bones into the back toes right here, so that they will bend later on. I also added some bones into the fabric right here, because I noticed in my previous recordings that this did not move properly with the rest of it. It just got weirdly stretched out as each leg moved forward. So this way, this will move according to just this strip right here rather than the legs. So I can put some controls on that later on. So it's going to act just like I've got the bones I've got running back here. All right. Now, today's lesson is about painting weights. Now, what are weights in this context? Well, every vertex on this object right here is weighted to one of the bones, one of the joints right here in my skeleton that has been skinned to. And that means that at least one of them anyway. And that means that whenever the joint moves, the vertices will move with it to a certain degree. A lot of these being controlled by 2 or 3 different joints. And by controlling the weight, we control how much each vertex is being controlled by each joint. Say, if I want all of the arm being controlled by just this, I'd paint it so it's 100% being controlled by just this joint. But places like here, there is a gradation between this joint in here and, let's say, this joint here or this joint here. And to see what that looks like, if I click on this and then right click and go to Paint Skin Weights, this pops up with a list of every single joint that has any influence on this object that I currently have selected. And I can see which one of these joints is being viewed right here. So if I got my left arm joint selected here, that's this one right there. And the whiter this gradient color is, this black to white gradient, the whiter it is, the more it's being controlled by this joint. The darker it is, the less it's being controlled. If it's completely black, it's not being controlled by it at all. Now, if I want to make sure this part right here is not being controlled by the arm, because it doesn't make a lot of sense for this to be, moving with the arm too much. What I don't do is I don't paint this black and make it, no longer being controlled by this joint. But instead, what I do is I want to paint this to another joint, whichever other joint in here I want this to be controlling these vertices. I add control to those, because if I take control away from this one, it's going to be reassigned to something else. There's always going to be a maximum of 100% total. And that 100% can be either this, or something else. If I take it away from this one, I don't know which of these other joints is being added to. So instead, if I go to, say, spine right here, I can add this to the spine. Now, this big circle right here, that is the brush radius. If I hold down the letter B for brush and then left click with my mouse and drag to the left, I can shrink that down. And then I'll go down here to the paint operations. I'm going to set this to replace. And I always like to set this to 100% value, but a really low opacity. And what that does is it slowly moves it closer and closer to being 100% or 1. According to this goes from 0 to 1. 1 is 100%. As I add to it, it'll slowly become more and more controlled by this joint in the middle. If I click on the shoulder right here, I can see, well, there's still some stuff being controlled by the shoulder in here, so I can go back to my spine. I can add more to that. So I want this all to be controlled But that top spine right there, I can just add it more and more as I go. And you notice, by the way, I am not painting on the other side. I'm only doing one half of this at a time because I can mirror the effects later on. As long as my objects are symmetrical, I can mirror my paint job to the other side. And what I like to do is I'll paint for a while, and I change this from replace to smooth, and I always increase my opacity on smooth. And if I click and drag, I can kind of soften the edges of where I've been painting so it blends better with the other joint influences. I probably don't want that to be so gray right there. I'll go back in here, set my operation back to paint, reduce my opacity again. I'm just going to really paint heavy right here. And you can see no longer being affected by that one. No longer being affected right there. And smooth a little bit. And maybe I don't want this being affected by this at all up there. Well, I probably want to be a little bit affected because this is like the clavicle joint, right? This is where you shrug from. Your arms can only go about so high up at your shoulder joint. You got to bend from here if you want to lift your arm any higher than that. So this is probably going to have some effect on the shoulder. Not too much. I'll smooth that out a little bit. I want to be fairly gentle around here. And I'm not going to lie to you. Getting the weights perfect can take a very, very long time. Which is why I usually aim for good enough. Somebody out there does nothing but this all day long, and they're really good at it. And you know what? I bet they enjoy their work too. I've met people like that who enjoy this part of the job. I don't understand them. I understand how important it is, but I do not understand enjoying it. But hey, I enjoy UV layouts, so I I got nothing to say on this matter. If I move that around, see, the most important thing is when you're doing the arms to make sure that when you move the arms, the rest of the body doesn't move with it. Because what happens a lot of the time is you start off with your arm close to the body, and then you move it away, and it painted the weights by default such that your hips are attached to your wrist or something like that, which is kind of annoying. Now, there's no point painting unless you move the joints around to see how the weights move. But eventually, you do have to, go back to your root right here and right-click and tell it to assume the preferred angle, which brings it back to the bind pose. And once you got back to the bind pose, I can select this object right here and go to Skin, Mirror Skin Weights. It's going to mirror across the YZ axis. The Y is up and down, Z is forward. So that's like a plane that goes from up, forward like this, like right through the middle of the scene. That means it's going to mirror it from the X, positive X to negative X. So it's going to go from right to left. I could swap this so it goes to left to right, but since I painted on my right side, the positive X, I'm going to mirror it into my negative X. And now if I rotate this joint, well, this is probably fine. It's probably this that needs to be mirrored. Let me apply that there too. There, see that? Now they both work exactly the same. This is why when I made the body, for a lot of these parts anyway, I tried to make sure that they were the same object right here. Unfortunately, I did not do that for everything. If I had, life would have been a lot easier. Yeah, like these legs right here. Those are all the same object, so I can just mirror from one side to the other. If I had done that with the fingers right there, I would have a lot easier time with things. Let's just see what my weights look like here. Yeah, that's not very good. I have to redo all of that. So do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make my life a little bit simpler. I'm going to select these. I'm going to delete my history on them. Combine them back together again. Delete history again. I guess those are thumbs, really. And once I've done that, I can select my bones in here. All the ones that are affecting geometry. Skin, I'm going to rebind them. It's actually better than it was a minute ago. There we go. This I'm less worried about because that's just going to be all one thing pretty much. That's not going to be a lot of work to do. But these might get a bit complicated. The reason I want to make sure they're also attached here is I want the base of this to not move. Because if the base moves, when this moves, it's going to pop out of the body like that, see? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to hide everything but that. I'm going to select everything around here as like inside of the wrist. Right around there. And now if I right click, go to paint skin weights. There's my left hand right there. I'm going to replace this 100% value, 100% opacity. I'm just going to hit flood, and that fills all of that in right there with white. And now when this moves, most of that doesn't move around. Most of this stays up there where it belongs. Now, if I had a vertex right there, that would have held that in place a bit better, but I can see what happens if maybe I just make the... No, I don't want to do anything with that one. I'm just going to accept that this is going to move outside a little bit right there. It's going to be fine. Good enough anyway. I do want to make sure that this area here is 100% attached to this. So if I select those and then control right click and hold my mouse down, I can change this to vertices. And now I can on my thumb and replace that 100%. Now when this moves, all of that is attached to that. And when this moves, this part up there will stay steady. Oops, you can see I got a few bits right here. I probably want to select these vertices. These vertices. Come on. Right there. I'll flood those. Now this is all being controlled by that. UV shell, grab these. Right click, control right click to vertices. And I'll paint all these 100% to the next joint down the line, like that. Control right click to vertex to vertex. And I'm going to use smooth and just sort of average those out a little bit. A little bit of a bend right here. Instead of being completely sharp right there, these will flex a little bit at the joint while the rest of it is still completely solid. And I could do the same thing with this bit right here. This, by the way, is one of the reasons why I like to break these pieces up into individual UV shells. It makes it really easy to select them. There we go. There's the last part of the thumb. I'll replace that 100%. And then maybe I'll grab just the vertices near here, shift greater than to expand out there a little bit, and I can smooth them down a little bit with the flood. Add a little bit of a flex right at the base. Look at that. Oops. Look at that. Those should not be doing that. Now, if I go to the thumb right here, you can see that I'm not actually seeing anything happening right there. There shouldn't be anything there, but apparently there is. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go to Skin. I'm going to tell us to prune small weights. There might just be some very, very small weights up here. Smooth that till this goes away, and then I'll Skin, prune small weights again. As there's a very, very small amount of my thumb 3 right here affecting these around there. Skin. I'll up that a little bit. There. See if this still moves when I rotate it. Nope. Hopefully now these are only being affected for the joints that matter, because these are the only ones that I have affecting it. Oh, that one is not mirrored. Oh well. So I'm going to set this back to my preferred angle. Make sure this is 2. There we go. Now if I select this, I can skin, mirror skin weights, and now these ones over here should work exactly the same. Look at that. This should be nothing but the wrist joint right here. Like it says hand. Except maybe right here. I'm going to start by just entirely placing with the hand. Like that. Then, let's see, is there a UV shell right up here? Nope, there isn't. Oh, there it is. Vertices. Grow that out a little bit. And that will be to the forearm. And I can smooth it with my hand right here. A little bit better at least, but still a bit weird. The forearm replace, I'll reduce my opacity really low. And then smooth it. There, that should help it bend here. Fortunately, I don't have a way of mirroring that, so I have to do it the hard way. Split the whole thing first. Blood. UV shell. The vertices. Expand that out a bunch. Forearm. These are probably not going to be exactly the same on both sides, but you know what? I can make them work. Good enough. Now, why do you have that in there? This shouldn't be affecting that at all. If I don't want this to affect that, I'll set this first back to my preferred angle. I can go to skin. Right, yeah, skin. Add influences. I can actually remove influence, so this is no longer affecting it. Same thing on that one. Now that may have some effects on the weights I just painted. Let's see. Going worse. Not too bad. Now, take a look at the elbow right there. If I rotate my elbow, you can see that it is bending this part up here. I probably don't want that part to bend. This is supposed to be an exoskeleton after all. So I think I'm going to start weighting this back onto, just do what I tell you to. There we go. Back onto the body. Actually, probably select that whole thing. I don't really need to bother selecting vertices for that. Let's see. Left arm, left shoulder, there it is. This is also being affected by that a lot more than it should have been. So I'm going to set this back. Something weird happened here. Select all these. Why are you popping out so far? Or, oh, I clicked that one. That's why, maybe. There. And this should not be affecting this. Same thing with this one over here. Remove. There we go. And I want is the base of this be completely attached. My arm up there. Left arm, yes, all right. And then blur it out with my smooth after that. As I rotate it. I like the position of those elbows. Again, move skin joints. I'm going to pull these over a bit. Same thing with you. I don't like the angle of that either. Been a while. Can't remember if I showed you this already. If I set this component and turn on the question mark, I can rotate these. They're pointing in the angle that the elbow is supposed to rotate. Back off. Let's check and see how that rotates. That's better. And I'll put just a little bit. Maybe I shouldn't. Let's leave that. I'll say like this. For the time being. It's like this. Skin. Mirror skin. It's like this. Skin. Mirror skin. Back preferred angle. See how the head moves. It's not too bad. Select hierarchy. Alright. How about her spine? That's moving pretty good, I'd say. Yeah, these parts down here probably shouldn't be moving so much with it, but it's not bad. Let's take a look at her legs. Now you see right there, that probably shouldn't be happening. I'm trying to remember, did I attach my hips override to that? No, I did not. I want this to also be affected by my hips override. So I'm going to go to skin, add influences, and add influence. And that should help the hips stay in place. There we go. Not bad. Sometimes you get lucky and the weighting just works as is. Let's check out these fabric bits up here. Does this wave around like I want? More than I want, actually. I want the top part to be weighted to the head, and the rest of this to move freely. So I'm going to select all the vertices on top of the head. Throw that out until I get the entire top of the head. Probably not you. Deselect those. There's the head. Replace 100%. There. And now below that, I can do some smoothing. There we go. I want this to the same. Select hierarchy. That works pretty well, I'd say. Swish, swish, swish. I will say that my first attempt did not go nearly this well because I did not have this controlled by its own skeleton, so I kept getting in the way of everything. But for the most part, I'd say this moves pretty well. But yeah, I'm happy with that for my weights. For now. I'll be honest with you, what usually happens is I stop working on the weights, and then later on I try to pose, and I realize, ooh, I did not think about that particular pose when I was paying the weights. I better fix this one bit. And I wind up paying the weights as I go. But for now, as far as the lesson goes, that's good enough.